Federico, I saw that you tagged me in that SheFi announcement. I actually am writing up an email right now to introduce myself to Maggie. Maybe that's something we could talk about. This looks really cool. Tyler,
Yeah.
let me send you the Medium article in the chat here.
Yeah, I saw it in internet and in Twitter. I thought that could be interesting for you.
Yeah, I want to see where she is in the planning stages of this organization. I would love to get involved on the ground floor in any way. So I'm typing up an email to just introduce myself and tell her what, Tyler's been working on a DeFi class and, our particular interest, especially as philosophy professors turned blockchain professionals, have a particular interest in the social impact of this technology. So I love what she's doing. Hopefully we can help her in some way. Did you see the article, Tyler? So yeah, I mean, even something like if they want to build their own kind of resource center for educating and whatever demographic, they're specifically targeting, I'd be happy to volunteer some of our time to help them build out syllabus and stuff. Not sure exactly how much of an educational component, what it'll look like, but that's what the email's for.
Let's see here. Sorry, I didn't know that I was on mute, but I was responding to you. Is the DeFi future female? Why not? DeFi, or decentralized finance, is traditional and not so traditional financial tools and services reimagined in a peer-to-peer network, and is one of the fastest growing spaces in Ethereum. While the innovations of DeFi make it an incredibly exciting time to be part of the crypto scene, it's discouraging to see a lack of women participating in and benefiting from DeFi. If there isn't a proactive effort to educate and engage more women, there will likely be a similar or larger financial literacy gap than the one that exists in our current system. I have some statistics here. To give you an idea of some of the current financial gaps, here are some data points from a study by Allianz Financial.
Yeah. Who's that?
I don't know. They say a quarter of women in the study say that they currently engage a financial professional, which is down from 30% in 2016. Over half of women say they wish they were more confident in their financial decision-making. Fewer women say they feel financially secure. It's interesting you bring this up because me and Kylie the other night were talking about just this issue. She approached me and said, how is this stuff really going to be the future if it just sounds so fucking complicated? But I had to remind her that she has she's in a peculiar position where she gets to hear me talk to people about things at a much higher, more technical level, or
Yeah.
sorry, I guess you might want to say lower, a much lower technical level than really what anybody who just wants to make use of these applications needs to be hearing. So like the first thing to note was that just as you don't know how traditional banking works and you can use that banking system, and just as you don't know how a carburetor works or how to sort of build a car and know all of the fancy interworkings of a car under the hood, you can still sort of make use of a car. I think the same is true with something like DeFi. Naturally at first, like we're all trying to figure out just what the friendliest user experience is and what kind of interface can support that. So there is a little bit of a learning curve and a lot of Wild West landscape that you have to navigate up front. But I think going forward, we're going to see things really simplify. And a good example of something that already exists that is actually quite simple, which was turned on to me by Jeremy Guzman, was or is the Dharma wallet. So you download Dharma wallet and it works just like Venmo, for example. You hook a debit card up to it, you press deposit, and it loads money onto like onto your Dharma wallet. It locks it for like 10 days. You start earning interest on it immediately because you're essentially contributing to a decentralized lending pool. And then after 10 days, you can withdraw it in the form of ETH or DAI, or you can put it back into your bank account, right? There's just a couple basic functions. And so that's really promising to see that actually already in the early stages, there's some really simple user-friendly interfaces and applications being built. So as long as we keep the distinction between what's going on under the hood and sort of what's actually required of you as a user, it's a less intimidating future. So I see why there is no reason why women wouldn't be a large part of that future if we make sure that that's a part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's been my message since I first got involved in the space. You know, attending a bunch of conferences in Asia and Europe, and just having the experience of being in the most disparate humanities major, just kind of enjoying inserting myself into male-dominated fields, and kind of hearing what the conversations were around blockchain. And there was like, you know, it's a huge subset of libertarian ideology, and this kind of lofty talk about all the freedom and chance for financial freedom that this technology is going to give, and only 2% of women are cryptocurrency owners. So I just don't see how it's possible that if there's access to this new form of wealth generation, and still the same people who have always had access to wealth generation are the only ones utilizing it, then how will that possibly create more equality overall? So I think we do have a responsibility to make this technology easier to understand, make it more user-friendly, understand the real issues that prohibit people from interacting with this technology. One thing that's kind of unique is that from conversations we've had with the creator of Black People in Cryptocurrency, it was just a unique problem for the Black community that they were being targeted by multi-level marketing scams in the crypto space. It was just a type of, you know, marketing that was just specifically targeting Black people, and a lot of them were falling victim to these scams. And so, you know, this all isn't created equally. These people are being exposed to this technology in different ways, and we need like ambassadors who understand that, and we need to amplify their voices. That's what I believe.
Right.
I think I'm totally agree with what you're saying, Ashlie. But I will use another vocabulary. I will not talk about equity, but about difference. I think that was a little what we was talking with Tyler and Roshan, and we made that podcast about decentralization and difference. I think we are, and therefore it's very important for me what you are advocating for this, for women, for Black people, etc. And we have to go further. I think it's very important to break with this idea of identity, and just that is a little. I have some friends, some libertarian friends here also, and the most important values are freedom and identity, homogeneity. I don't know how it says. Um, and for me, it's very important to start talking about difference, decentralization, disruption, discontinuity, and it's not just about identity and power for the people, but I think it's very important to start thinking what is the meaning of difference and plurality, and that means fairness and of course justice, but the justice is not always to say that we are all the same or we have to be the same or everything is the same way. I think that, but it is, we must imagine what means to be different, what means decentralization, what means plurality, multiplicity. I think that blockchain and all these new technologies and in economics also are very important for development or an actual realization of these differences and differentiation and decentralization. I think I see this also in philosophical way. I'm talking from a philosophical background.
So with respect to what you said, I definitely think that that is a solution, right? It seems like you're offering a solution to some of the issues that Ashlie was trying to point out. And I just wanted to clarify, so far as I saw it and what Ashlie was saying, is that there's still facts that you have to acknowledge about certain classes of people, certain demographics, such that people who fall into those demographics, you know, however you want to divide it up, certain people fall into certain demographics or certain socioeconomic classes or certain social groups that may start at a disadvantage when it comes to understanding just what is going on in this new financial paradigm shift, right? And so the sort of concern, as I heard it being articulated by Ashlie, was one of safeguarding, so far as we can, in the best way that we can, safeguarding these sort of institutions that we're now having to work with, so that there's a kind of equity, if you will, that we eventually achieve when it comes to how accessible these things are to people. So whether you're talking about women or you're talking about people of color or people who may just be financially illiterate from the get-go because they, you know, were born into like a poverty-stricken class or something like that. So I definitely think that what you said is good by way of offering a solution to that, right? You're saying like, well, what we ought to do going forward is really strive to sort of like abandon the strong grip that we have on the notions of identity that we've been working with. And that can be like a preventative measure, but I think that there's still something that needs to be dealt with in the present moment, right? And that's what I heard Ashlie touching on, is it's the fact that certain people are more disposed to being taken advantage of. And so how do we utilize the tools that we have at hand to sort of keep that at bay?
Yeah, totally. I think that this technology has this possibilities of making, I don't know, yeah, these demographic groups that are marginalized, and they come, they have new possibilities. I think that is there are more possibilities of democratization of, but also, but not losing their own specificity, their own difference. I think that is what I find so interesting from these new technologies, that it's not just about to get in, I don't know, to be part of a group, or I don't know, closing around everything in a totalization. But I think that the important is the maintaining the differences, maintaining the specificity of every group, that everyone can act with her own, his own specificities, and etc. Idiocracy, etc. That is for me the most important of these new technologies, this new on everything what we are doing here, and we were trying to build.
Right. And I think that that is actually one advantage that decentralized networks have over traditional, so-called more centralized networks, or at least if we're talking about DeFi and decentralized finance, right? One of the advantages that open permissionless systems have over the alternative is that it allows us to embrace those differences. There are less gatekeepers in the way that can sort of discriminate against you on what is very likely arbitrary bases.
Yeah, I think that is actually the challenge, is how to form a community without canceling the differences. How is possible? That is the question. How is possible to build a community without having everybody something in common? But I think that it's very important that there is always a difference. There is always a gap that we can form a plurality, but without totalization, without being a close group, a closest group, and but always open. That is the idea. How is possible an open society, a different society, where we are responsible for the others, but without being just one common thing, totally close, yeah, in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I'm curious what your definition of community would be, because I feel that, at least my original intuition would be that a community has to have at least one thing in common, and that's their willingness to be considered part of the community, or the fact that they are, whatever actions they perform are going to affect members of that community. There's at least, like, that is the minimum, I think, thing you have to have in common with people in a community, is that you actually belong to that community. So how you get placed there might end up causing more of those similarities to arise, but I'm just curious if you can expand on that.
So let me just ask sorry. I just wanted to ask a clarificatory question.
Yeah, I think that the important thing is not just about to have something in common. I think him here in the idea of nature. That was a tradition in philosophy, where we, as human beings, have something in common. That is, I don't know, nature, human nature. I'm more about community. It's, I don't know, fulfilling a task or doing. I think a community is more regarding performance, what we are doing together, and when I'm or practices, ethics. I have this idea that's the more important. That's what unite us. I don't know. I'm with others in a community. Is that what I'm doing for the others or not? That it have to do more with the performance of my being, of my existence, more than having something like human essence or human nature. I think that what unites me with the others is my response, my action. This is, I will go more with sort of pragmatisms, and in this idea of acting, of doing for the others or regarding others, and that is what forms a community. I have to maybe resume this, maybe write it down better, but that is a general idea, I will say. It's more in acting, in praxis, in philosophical category, than in having something like an essence or like nature.
Awesome, thanks. Tyler, you had a clarificatory question?
I mean, it's sort of, it doesn't really matter now, but I was just wondering if your question to Federico was something having to do with whether or not his emphasis on difference somehow did damage or was like notionally incompatible with community. If it was to say like, hey, how can you actually have a community if sort of what you want to emphasize here as the basis for something that like resembles a community is difference. But
well, maybe if you think about where the word comes from, like to be in communion with another person, maybe it's more about how we're able to interact with each other, and that's what we have in common, is that we are touching in some way, or just existing in an ecosystem where our actions influence each other.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a good definition. Like, oh no, it's not in this book. Never mind. There's a book called Communion by Bell Hooks, The Female Search for Love, and she has a really good definition of communion in the beginning. But I just have all about love here.
all about love.
There was some philosophers they were thinking about community. Roberto Esposito, Jean-Luc Nancy in France, Esposito in Italy. But yeah, for me, it's this idea difference and it's more not having something in common, like, you know, characteristics, or but that what builds a community is what I'm doing for the others. It's action, I will say.
Yeah, and I mean, you might want
that maintains always difference.
Yeah, and you know, you might also want to just keep it at the level, right? It may suffice to keep things at the level of being human, and that's the one common thread that we all have. And I guess more specifically, it's pursuing the highest human good, right? Like we all want to sort of live a flourishing life, and you can keep that really ambiguous. It can be really general like that. And then you can have people united in a common activity, which is, you know, pursuing the highest good, pursuing a life in a world that is flourishing. And again, we're keeping it really open and ambiguous. And so that way you can sort of merge these two intuitions, the one that Ashlie was talking about, where it's, you know, the more sort of obvious take on, or sort of the, like, I think the take on a community that we don't want to do an injustice to, namely something which is sort of united in a commonality. But also we can preserve what you want in this idea of difference, because what unites us is the fact that we're all human beings, and that we're pursuing the highest good, a world in which we can flourish. But the way in which we might be able to do that is by embracing everybody in their differences, right? So like you have sort of difference taking place at the level of the sort of nature of the individual, or the kind of essence. I know that you wanted to take that in a different direction, but it's just to say that everybody has a kind of unique identity, if you will. But because we're all human beings that are, you know, banding together toward a common end, and that's essentially what our activity is oriented towards, we can still be a community of people who are, you know, rather different from each other. And again, this comes back to sort of one of the virtues of open access technologies, permissionless networks, open source, etc., is it sort of doesn't hinder people from participating, from acting on the basis of, you know, things that might turn out to just be arbitrary markers of how they're different from another person. You sort of level the playing field by giving sort of equal access to opportunity, you know, open source platforms, permissionless networks, etc. And then everybody can sort of use those however they think they need to, in, you know, pursuing the common human goal.
Yeah, maybe I will go for radical because of yeah, it's not always clear what we are all are as human beings pursuing, and that is because of that I'm always thinking about always or maybe I don't know, maybe I think it's more important to think about the present, and not always thinking about an ultimate end, or an a final objective, because we don't really know, and the differences are huge, and we have to imagine what is this last end or this last objective. And because of that, I think is the most important is what you do in present time for the others and for of course, I think that I'm totally agreed that these new technologies are suitable to this idea to in the present moment, in the instant world, because we are always living in the present. We can maintain friends, not being indifferent for the others, and always this idea. And I think I'm obviously this technology is allowing this to actually live these ideas of maintaining differences, being not indifferent for the others, and also being together in a plural and yeah, differential community.
We should definitely do a couple philosophy hours on the 72-hour live stream, Tyler and Federico.
Coming up next. Stay tuned to learn more about the state of the art in blockchain and cryptocurrency technology. Reimagine 2020.